Deep dives and blue skies. Welcome back to Talking Blue with Nick, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Blue, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you could find. I'm your host, Nick. You are listening to episode 112 of Talking Blue. We are here today to recap the Dodgers, the Phillies series, which wrapped up last night, Wednesday, July 22nd. The Dodgers did take 2 out of 3 from the Phillies. They do get a pretty big series win. 2 big series wins to start out the second half. One against the Yankees, one against the Phillies. Pretty good start against some good teams. We know, I've documented the last couple weeks, that the next few weeks going forward are against a lot of very good teams, like the Yankees, like the Phillies. We're going to see teams like Seattle. We're going to see teams like the Red Sox, who just finished off a 14-game win streak, I believe it was. A couple other teams as well, Cubs, Brewers. So it's going to be very important to get these series wins. Dodgers will actually have a little bit of a break this weekend against the Mets. Don't sleep on the Mets, but we know they haven't had a great season. So a little bit of a, easier series with all these really good teams that the Dodgers will play. So before we can get to all that stuff, we're going to recap the 3 games as always. I'll do some injury stuff. There are some pretty interesting injury/roster updates. Like I said, we'll then do the 3 games, give my thoughts, a couple breakdowns on guys like Wrobleski, Emmett Sheehan, some of the offensive players, Max Muncy, all that kind of stuff. So as always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of the videos dropping. You can see YouTube Shorts. And then obviously, if you prefer to visibly watch a podcast, you can listen, like I said, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, but you can also watch on YouTube as well. Follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. That is Instagram, TikTok, and X. And then you can follow myself at Nick Talking Ball on X. I tweet all things baseball and a lot of things about the Dodgers. Recently made a couple posts about Justin Wrobleski, Emmett Sheehan, and his struggles. We're going to get to all that stuff in the pod today. It'll be more of a substantial breakdown, but you can go over to my pod and follow me to see a couple of those little videos that I made. So let's go ahead. Let's get into the roster injury stuff before we get into the actual games. Okay, we'll start off with Shohei Ohtani, as always. One of the more important guys. Got to always start off with him, right? So he threw his bullpen Wednesday before the game. Full intensity bullpen is the words they used. And everything went well. Used all his pitches. Seems like his knee is starting to recover a little bit better since being drained and getting a shot prior to the All-Star break to feel a little bit better. Still is no timeline. Wasn't the kind of thing where you came off the mound and Dave Roberts said, all right, this weekend against the Mets or sometime next week. We are still a couple weeks away. Again, it's going to see, I think that from here on out, it's kind of crazy where the season's at. Like, we're already, late July, very close to the trade deadline. We're kind of at that point in the season where you can really start to look ahead to the end of the season. And I think it'll be from here on out with Ohtani, it's just going to be a, looking towards the postseason and kind of just seeing how he feels. If from going forward from this time that he threw the bullpen, let's say going through the rest of the year, if he just continues to trend up and feel better, then maybe, at the end of July, they can start to really look towards when can he get back on the mound next sometime. And, again, depending on how he feels, it could be early August and he could go right back to pitching every 5-6 days. Maybe it'll be more, mid to late August, whatever the case may be. I've always said that I think that the knee isn't the biggest of deals. I just think at this point in the season, it's become sure, he could pitch on the knee and it wouldn't be much of an issue. But at this point, it's best in our interest to delay his pitching and keep him healthy going into October rather than have him play through this now and potentially create a more catastrophic injury. Edwin Diaz, all right, super fun and positive update. He completed his first back-to-back relief appearances. I told you guys that before, recently with Evan Phillips. One of the last boxes that relievers have to check, pitch on back-to-back days. All right, obviously most teams, especially teams like the Dodgers, try to avoid that as much as possible during the regular season. But obviously the life of a reliever is that you never know when you're going to pitch in terms of the game and obviously at any point in the 3-game series or 4-game series. So that is a big box that you have to check. And again, I was expecting Diaz maybe August. It looks right now he is on track to join the Dodgers during their next upcoming homestand, which would be actually Tuesday. The Dodgers will play the Mets for 3 this weekend. Off day Monday, which is nice. Nice off day after a long road trip. Go home and play the Mariners. It looks like Edwin Diaz and his fellow countryman, Kike Hernandez, will also be activated. Still is playing down in OKC. Rehab games. Also is on track to be activated. It'll be interesting if they're both activated Tuesday at the start of the series, or if it'll be like Kike's activated Tuesday, Edwin is activated Wednesday. But 2 major guys that will come off the IL, and that will only really leave us with a handful of guys left. It'll be interesting to see how the Dodgers handle those roster moves. I would imagine that Kike comes on, and they probably send Alex Freeland down. And then the Dodgers have kind of had this revolving door of an extra bullpen man, because their bullpen is actually pretty healthy right now, with the exception of obviously Edwin Diaz, but also Blake Trinan. So Charlie Barnes, who's currently on the roster at this very moment, would be DFA'd or optioned, and that would bring Edwin Diaz back. And the bullpen would be pretty close to full strength, honestly. I mean, and the last 3 guys, Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Will Smith, Glasnow and Will are basically the same updates. Glasnow is throwing his bullpens, still mainly throwing fastballs. Not much of a return or update, or I should say an update on his return date. Same thing with Will Smith. I still believe both these guys will be back at some point this year, but like I have said, they have kind of officially gone into that boat of, until we get some update on they're going out of rehab or they're going to be joining the team or blah, 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 they're kind of in this, I don't know, man. They're kind of just out of my mind. And then the last guy, like I said, Blake Snell, he will make his second rehab assignment, which is scheduled for tomorrow, July 24th, Friday, when the Dodgers are in New York to play the Mets. He will make his scheduled start there. So some pretty good news. Ohtani seems to feeling a little bit better with the knee. Diaz and Hernandez should be back during the next homestand, and then Blake Snell will make his second rehab start. Once he probably makes that 4th rehab start is where we could start to see, when he could actually be activated. Like I said, that will definitely be sometime in August. Let's go ahead and get into the games. We'll start with Game 1, Monday night, July 20th. That was Emmett Sheehan taking on left-hander Christopher Sanchez, one of the better pitchers in baseball, of course. All right, so scoring gets underway in the bottom of the second. Gabriel Rincones Jr., he hits a double into the right field corner to make it 1-0 Phillies. Later on, Justin Crawford, an RBI sac fly, makes it 2-0. Dodgers were 1 out away from getting out of this inning, just with the 2-0 deficit. But Trey Turner, who had an interesting series and an interesting game, to say the least, he homers to left field, the former Dodger, of course. 2-run homer, doubles the lead. It's now a 4-0 game in just the 3rd inning. We go ahead to the top of the 4th. This was a big chance for the Dodgers to get back into this game early. Runners on first and third with no outs. Teoscar Hernandez grounds into a double play. Kind of one of the worst ways to get on the board. A single right there, ball in the gap, even a sac fly keeps it to, you got a run on the board and you got less than 2 outs. So you take the RBI and you take the run, of course, but now the bases are wiped clean and it's only a 4-1 game. Later in the 6th inning, a Max Muncy double into right field would make it a 4-2 game. Dodgers looked like they were going to really get back into this game like they've done a ton this year. Andy Pages, he singles on a ground ball to Trey Turner, shortstop Trey Turner. I believe this was the play, little bouncer over the pitcher's head. Trey Turner had to come in. I guess they marked it an RBI single, but it booted off of Trey Turner's glove. Really could have turned it into an out. I think he had 3 errors in this game. He had one in the 1st inning that kept that inning going, and then he later had one in the 9th inning when the game was a little bit out of reach. In the 6th inning, though, Brandon Marsh with Emmett Sheehan still on the mound. He homers into left field to make it a 5-3 game. And then Trey Turner homers off of Alex Vesia. Emmett Sheehan eventually came out of the game, runners on base. Vesia gives up a 3-run bomb. Very uncharacteristic from Vesia. We know how dominant he's been this year. Every once in a while, he'll give up a homer. He's not immune to no runs, but he gives up the homer. It's an 8-3 game. Again, the Dodgers, put up some runs, but it was a little bit too little, too late. Mookie Betts, this is a great sign. He hits his 12th home run of the year into left field to make it an 8-4 game. But again, Bryce Harper, his 21st home run of the year makes it 9-4. This was off of Landon Knack, who just loves to give up homers. 8th inning, Derek Hill even hits a home run to make it a 10-4 game. Dodgers would get on the board in the 9th. Eliezer Alfonso, an RBI ground out, makes it 10-5. And the Mookie Betts, he hits a 2-run shot to make it a 10-7 game. So a 2-home run game for Mookie Betts, his 13th of the year. But the Dodgers would lose by a score of 10-7. Like I said, a little too late for the comeback. Emmett Sheard goes 5.1 innings pitched. Alex Vessier for 2/3. And then Landon Knack pitched the final 2 innings. Dodgers were able to get to Christopher Sanchez. He pitched 5 1/3. They got 7 hits off him, 3 earned runs. They struck out 7 times, so they did make it a little bit uncomfortable, especially later in the game off of Christopher Sanchez, but really were lacking that one big hit to really catapult them back into this game completely. The Phillies were doing everything they can to get the Dodgers back into the game between the Trey Turner errors, which I guess he was only credited with 1 error, but there were really like 3 plays that really should have been turned into outs. And then, like I said, a couple of relievers not being able to fully hold down the fort when the Phillies had a big lead. Phillies tried to do everything they could to hand the Dodgers the game, or at least get them really back into the game, like a tie game. But like I said, Sheehan just didn't have it. Vesia, the big homer. Knack, big homers. And that was pretty much all she wrote. So let me start off with Emmett Sheehan before we get to Mookie Betts and before we keep it moving with all these games. So Emmett Sheehan, I'll give you his final line. 5 1/3 innings pitched, 8 hits allowed, 6 earned runs, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. He did allow 2 home runs. All right, so we start off the jump with Emmett Sheehan. He just literally cannot get anything going. It's been a lost season for sure by Emmett Sheehan. I mean, I shouldn't say lost, I guess, because he doesn't have enough of a track record to say that, this is only his 3rd season pitching in the big leagues. But considering how good he was in a short sample size last year, pretty big piece for them in the postseason. Wasn't perfect the whole time, but he definitely did what he could and adjusted as well as anybody could for a young guy to come out of the bullpen, considering he had never done anything like that. But it's been the same story all year with him. It's been the homers. It's just been the inconsistency. Really similar to like Kyle Tucker in a certain way, like has not been able to fully get going. He's had a couple of, a handful of good starts. Even sometimes he's pitched well back to back. There was a point in time in May, I believe it was, where he started to pitch a little bit better, and I thought he was going to continue to get better and better. And by the second half, later in the season, we would see some pretty decent numbers out of Sheehan, but he's just not been able to do it. And again, I've talked about this before, but I haven't done it in a long time, so I'll kind of explain, what's been the biggest problems with Sheehan, because it's really weird when you dive into it, because he still manages to get a lot of strikeouts and whiffs and not allow walks. Like, so many times you see pitchers who have great strikeout stuff, and maybe you look at their numbers and say, man, how are they not better? This guy's get so many strikeouts. They have such electric stuff. And one of their issues is walks. Sometimes, it's not uncommon for pitchers that have great stuff, have great strikeout stuff to walk batters. But Sheehan's not really that guy. He doesn't really have a lot of walks in this game. 16 whiffs is great. 6 strikeouts is pretty good. Only 1 walk. But he allowed 8 hits, and 2 of them were home runs. The average exit velocity against his fastball was 97 miles an hour. The average exit velocity. So the average amount of balls put in play were hit at 97 miles an hour. And again, what makes things so weird with Emmett is a lot of his underlying metrics are not just similar to last year, but almost exactly the same. His barrel rate, his average exit velocity, his hard hit rate, his ground ball numbers, his fly ball numbers, all of that stuff is exactly the same. All right, let me just quickly, his barrel rate. Last year it was 10.1. This year it's 10.3. The average exit velocity, 89.3, 89.4. You look at his hard hit rate. It's actually better this year. 41.6 hard hit rate a year ago. Right now it's 39.9. Okay, if you look at his expected ERA last year was an even 3. All right, right now his expected ERA, even with the really high actual ERA that he has, his expected ERA is 3.88. Okay, his walk rate last year was 7.6. This year it's 7.2. The strikeout rate is a little down. Last year 30%, 30.5% strikeout rate. That's great. That's elite. This year it's at 26.4, which is still very, very good. Obviously, it's just with the overall production being down, he just has less strikeouts, so a little bit of a 4% decrease. You take a look at his whiff numbers. They're not overall too different. Last year, 32.9% whiff rate. Right now, it's 30.4. You take a look at his chase rate, 32.9% last year. This year, it's at 35.3. So you read all those numbers and you say he's not walking hitters at a more alarming rate. He's not giving up more hard hit balls per se. He's not giving up more barrels. He's actually giving up, like I said, less hard hit balls. The average exit velocity is the same. He still gets a lot of strikeouts. And then if you look at the actual balls in play, his fly ball percentage last year, 29.8%. Right now it's 29.6, almost identical. His ground balls, last year 33.7. Right now it's at 35%. So he's actually getting more slightly percentage of ground balls. So what the heck is the issue? What is the issue? If you look at all those numbers, how could he have an ERA last year of 2.82? Right now it's at 5.13. If he's basically doing the exact same thing he did last year, what's the difference? The difference is in his pull air percentage. So fly balls pulled in the air, which obviously leads to home runs. Last year he had a pull air percentage of 18%. This year it's at 27.6, a massive increase. All right, that is the 8th highest in baseball this year, and it's the 6th highest increase in pull air percentage from a year ago, from 2025. All right, so the 6th highest increase of any pitcher from last year. Okay, and obviously, what did pulled fly balls lead to? Home runs, the biggest issue for Sheehan this year. 73.1 innings pitched last year. He allowed just 7 home runs. In 87 2/3 innings pitched this year, he's allowed 17 home runs. Okay, hitters slugged 372 against Sheehan in the top part of the strike zone last year. And to put that in perspective, a 372 slugging percentage is basically what Bo Bichette has been this year, who's been one of the more underperformed, disappointing hitters. In 2026, hitters are slugging 542 against Sheehan in the top part of the strike zone. To put that in perspective, that is what Juan Soto slugs. Okay, so the biggest difference for Sheehan, what the really big problem, what has changed for him is basically the type of contact he's giving up. Because like I said, it's not like he's giving up way more hard hit balls, way more barrels, and it's not even like he's giving that much more, giving up a bigger percentage of fly balls in general. It's not like he's gone from a ground ball pitcher to a fly ball pitcher and some balls are going out of the ballpark now. No, it's that the balls that are hit in the air are all being hit to the pull side, or at least a much more a bigger increase to the pull side as opposed to a year ago. So it all stems from that, and a lot of that stems from what I think is his fastball being hit at a much higher clip. So if you take a look at his meatball percentage, that's pitches thrown right down the middle. 5.1 last year. This year it's at 7.7. So a higher increase in balls thrown right down the middle. His fastball has the 10th highest opponent slug in baseball. 10th highest. So people are, opposing hitters are crushing his fastball. The fastball metrics itself are very similar in terms of the spin rate, the vertical movement. The velocity is somewhat down. I think that has been part of the issues with him is that his velocity has dipped a little bit, where you don't see as many 98s, 97s from Sheehan anymore. He sits more like 93 to 95, but he's kind of put a lot of those behind him, where earlier in the year it was really a big concern. Hasn't really been much of an issue this year for Emmett. This year he's averaged 94.5. His rookie year, he averaged 95.5, and then last year, he averaged 95.6. So the velo is down a full mile an hour, but still averaging 94.5 with a pretty filthy slider that he has. That's been not, it's not a giant noticeable jump, but it is something that I imagine has to play some part of the reason. And, I read you the numbers with the, top part of the strike zone. Sheehan is the type of guy with the way that he pitches, with his arm slot, his size, the way that he's used his fastball in the past, he's always been a guy that's lived upstairs. So now, maybe with the velo being down a little bit, I don't know if that's been able to allow hitters to get on top of that fastball more, and it's led to the home runs, not being able to dominate that top part of the zone. He hasn't had a feel for his changeup like he used to have. That's one of my things that I loved about Sheehan in the past, was that he was a guy that had good fastball, good slider, and the ability to throw a changeup to both sides. I do like that. Being able to throw it to righties, throwing it to lefties. He hasn't had a feel for that as much this year. The velocity has dipped a little bit, and it's just all added up into he just gives up way more homers this year. That's kind of been his biggest bugaboo. Because again, you look at a lot of his expected numbers. His expected ERA is actually under 4. A lot of the expected numbers suggest that he should be even better than someone like Justin Wrobleski, who we'll get to in a minute, who has an ERA under 3. So it's very weird. It's been, without question, a year that Sheehan and the Dodgers can throw away. They're going to have to get back in the lab, and, we'll see how he can finish off. He still obviously has 2 months left to pitch, so I'm not writing him off or anything like that. But the fact that we are in late July, the trade deadline is coming up, a lot of guys are looking to be close to coming off the IL. It does look like a year where we are just trending towards when the postseason comes around, Sheehan's just not going to have a spot left. Because the Dodgers are probably going to have a pretty deep bullpen, where a year ago we know they had the bullpen issues where Emmett was the perfect guy. Hey, we got these 4 starters, Ohtani, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Snell. Let's put this young kid in the bullpen who's got this great elite strikeout whiff ability. That's what you want in the bullpen. He can end up being a weapon, and that's what I believed. And it didn't fully come together like that. He wasn't a massive piece, but he did pitch some solid innings against the Phillies in the World Series as well. He did get some decent, some big outs. But, it just, this year is just trending towards he's not going to be on the postseason roster, and he will have to go into the offseason looking to maybe increase the velo a little bit, get a feel for his changeup back, and really come back in the following year as a new man. But, I'm getting way ahead of myself in terms of that. He still has, he'll probably have 1 or 2 more starts left in July. He'll pitch this Mets series, actually, and then hopefully he can get things turned around in August into September. But it's just been a struggle, and for whatever reason, the increase in fly balls to the pull side that's just what has killed Sheehan this year. So the last couple things in this game before we go to the game 2. The offense did a lot and did put up some runs, but the pitching just couldn't hold it down. Obviously, Sheehan, Vesia gave up the big homer. Rare bad day from him. Like I said, it was just a little bit too late, too little too late. But I did want to talk about Mookie Betts. He had a big game in the opening game. Spoiler, he didn't do much the following 2 games, but, he had definitely gone back to being pretty cold the last few weeks. I know that, I've talked so much about in the month of June, he was excellent early on into July, but when the first half wrapped up, he had gone pretty cold, didn't do much in that Yankee series, so he entered Monday night's game 4 for his last 38, all right? 4 for 38 in his last 11 games. He had an OPS on the season of 689. And this was a guy that we had been talking about. The OPS was slowly climbing and climbing. It got up to like 750 at one point. Well, now it dropped way down to embarrassing 689. But after that 4 for 5 night, 2 home runs, 2 singles, the OPS actually jumped all the way up to 731. Okay, and you got to remember, Mookie had mistimed earlier in the season, so he has the less at-bats under his belt, which actually could help in terms of you have a big night like that, the less at-bats allows your numbers to take a pretty big jump quickly as opposed to some other guys. So after that Monday night game, Mookie Betts had officially played exactly 64 games, okay? These are how his stats looked if you cut them in half in exactly 32 games each. So his first 32 games, he hit 190 with a 259 on base, a 365 slug, a 624 OPS. That's a weighted runs created plus of 71, and he had just 6 home runs. In his following 32 games, he hit 283 with a 341 on base, a 496 slug, 837 OPS, a 126 WRC plus, and 7 home runs. Now, obviously, like I said, the last couple weeks, he went back to being pretty cold, but it just shows half the season has been really, really bad. The other half has actually been very, very solid. And I give you those numbers: 837 OPS, 126 WRC plus. If that's what Mookie Betts is able to do for a full season with the defense he now plays at shortstop, that is still one of the better players, one of the better shortstops in the game. So I just wanted to give him some credit. He did not do anything in the following 2 games, so he still is kind of in this limbo of, he's been up and down. Hopefully this weekend against the Mets, he can definitely put together some better at-bats. He did have to face some pretty good pitching against guys like Sanchez and Wheeler and some pretty nasty relievers out of the bullpen. So let's go to Game 2. Justin Wrobleski is on the mound taking on Zach Wheeler. The second time the Dodgers have faced Wheeler this year, and the second time it's been Wrobleski versus Wheeler. Let's go to that game. Phillies actually get on the board first against Wrobleski in the first inning. An RBI single from Alec Bohm makes it 1-0, but we skip ahead to the fourth inning where the Dodgers get onto the board thanks to a 2-run shot from Max Muncy. He hits it out to dead center, his 19th home run of the year. And would you believe the Dodgers hang on to win by a score of 2-1. Have you heard that before? It wasn't that long ago, a couple days ago, in fact, when the Dodgers won a game 2-1 thanks to a Max Muncy 2-run home run. That was Friday night against the Yankees, against Garrett Cole. So very similar game. Dodgers beat a pretty solid right-handed pitcher thanks to Max Muncy. All right. Justin Wrobleski gets the win. He goes 6 1/3, 5 hits, 1 earned run, just 1 walk allowed, 7 strikeouts. Evan Phillips went 1 inning, and then Tanner Scott actually goes 1 2/3 innings pitched. Dodgers didn't really do much against Wheeler outside of that home run. He goes 7 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, no walks, 9 strikeouts. He obviously gets the loss. The second time this season, the Dodgers beat Zach Wheeler. He has 2 losses against him all season, and they both came against the Dodgers. Justin Wrobleski, it's the second time this season that he has outdueled Zach Wheeler. Pretty interesting. So let's start with that guy, Justin Wrobleski. I'm going to start with him before we get to the rest of the game. As you guys know, the way this game wrapped up with that double play was actually pretty crazy. But Justin Wrobleski, his final line: 6 1/3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. He pitched very good. He gets his 11th win of the season. He did it again. Justin Wrobleski starts off his second half fantastic. Just the way he finished off his first half. He pitched well in the All-Star game, and he just continues to pitch good. And the thing that's most exciting that I've been saying for a few weeks is Wrobleski is beginning to back up his success with some of his underlying metrics. I've talked about it all year, that if you take a look at his Baseball Savant page, a lot of his underlying metrics, a lot of them suggest that he is very fortunate to have the ERA that he does. He doesn't get a lot of whiffs, a lot of strikeouts. He doesn't even get a lot of ground balls. The one thing that he really does at an elite level is not walk anyone. But that's basically it. And a lot of that is always pointing to a regression, and that a regression was coming with Wrobleski. But as of late, he has pitched great, and it's actually increased some things about his game that makes you a little bit more excited. Okay, so 7 strikeouts and 11 whiffs for Justin. That's great. Again, if you went back a few months ago, 7 strikeouts, 11 whiffs. That's crazy for Wrobleski, but it's actually become somewhat more of the norm as of late. All right, he's actually started to mix in a new sweeper. I thought that was interesting. He got his last strikeout of Brandon Marsh with that pitch. But we know Wrobleski, his bread and butter, the thing that has made him great this year, at least one of the things, is his four-seam fastball. His four-seam fastball is the 3rd best fastball in the game according to run value. It has a 177 batting average against, 23rd best in the game, and the slugging, 245 slug against that pitch, is 15th best. So a guy that, one of the more surprising pitchers this year, Justin Wrobleski, has one of the best fastballs in the game, and according to batting average against, top 30 in the game. Who would have guessed that? So he has now made 16 starts. Okay, if you take a look at his first 8 starts compared to his last 8 starts. So his first 8 starts, he had a 13.8% strikeout rate, super low, 14.9% whiff rate. His fastball had a 16.5% whiff rate, and it only averaged 93.7 miles an hour. Okay, if you look at his last 8 games, all right, since after those 8 games, He has a 24.9% strikeout rate, which is pretty good. 23.3% whiff rate. His fastball has a 29.7% whiff rate, and it averages now 95.1 miles an hour in his last game. So again, first 8 games, his strikeout rate was 13.8. His last 8 games, 24.9. So he's increased the strikeouts and the whiffs a lot. The numbers on the fastball has actually been better. He's throwing harder. Last year, Wrobleski actually had some pretty good velocity early on in the season. It wasn't there. He's done something to increase the velo. The opponent batting average in those 8 games on the fastball, 141 average, 224 slug. All right. His 2.62 ERA is 7th best in baseball. His 3.21 opponent slug is 5th best in baseball. His 5.83 opponent OPS is 4th best. His 0.68 home runs per 9 is 4th lowest in baseball. So again, one of the things that has really helped out Wrobleski, and part of the reason as to why he's pitched so good, he's not giving up home runs. Emmett Sheehan could take a page out of his book. The increase in the stuff and the increase in the strikeouts actually makes me more confident that this guy could get some playoff starts. Because I'll be honest, as Dodger fans, we are definitely, what's the word I would use? We have high expectations of very dominant players and pitchers specifically going out there. And I think that all year, even though Wrobleski's been fantastic, where a lot of teams would have a guy with an ERA in the mid twos and say, this is our guy going into October. This guy's going to make a couple starts. Look at how good he did in the regular season. A lot of Dodger fans look at it and say, if Justin Wrobleski's making postseason starts for us, that is not a good sign. Well, now, while I would agree that, I would prefer the 4 guys that we know, the 4 horsemen, Yamamoto, Ohtani, Snell, Glasnow, I still want those guys to be the rotation, no question. But, in a world where, let's say, Glasnow doesn't get his stuff together and he doesn't come back, which is very much on the board, and the Dodgers have to throw out a postseason rotation of, let's say, Yamamoto Game 1, Ohtani Game 2, Snell Game 3, Wrobleski Game 4. Is there really anybody in baseball that has a better rotation than that? I know that a lot of Dodger fans might panic about Wrobleski getting starts, and would assume, if I told you that, maybe you would think something went wrong. But you know what? With the increased strikeout stuff, it does make me a little bit more confident that he could, be fine in the postseason. I still would be nervous because the ball is going to be in play in the postseason. That can lead to some ugly innings. But if he continues to increase the strikeout numbers and the whiff numbers, who knows? Who knows? I think that I would agree that it would depend on how everything shook out, okay? Because, right now, Glasnow is the guy that is the farthest away, seemingly. And if you were to rank the Dodgers' best pitchers of those 4 dominant guys, Glasnow, although it's almost unfair to rank them because they're so good, Glasnow would definitely be the 4th worst. So if you replace him with Wrobleski, it doesn't look that bad. If, let's say, Ohtani was able to not come back from pitching, and then you had to run out there, Yamamoto, Snell, who's only pitched a few innings, Glasnow, who knows, and then Wrobleski, I could agree that things don't look as good, but I think that if it was the first option I gave you with Snell, Ohtani, Yamamoto, Wrobleski, that's a great rotation. And I still think even without Glasnow that there wouldn't really be many postseason teams that could run out there a rotation like that. So he has grown on me a lot, where in the past Wrobleski's start days were, he's kind of just a placeholder until some injuries come back, and hopefully this guy can just hold it together for 5-6 innings. He has really grown on me and changed my opinion that he is a very good starting pitcher, and I feel confident when he goes out there, he's going to get outs, he's going to use that fastball upstairs, and he's actually going to get some strikeouts now. So he has been, without question, one of the bigger stories for them. Let's go to the rest of this game before we go to Game 3. I just wanted to quickly talk about Evan Phillips. Looked really good. He had 2 strikeouts, showcased some very nasty stuff. Velocity's actually up for Evan so far. Coming back from Tommy John, he's only pitched in 5 innings, so we'll have to see. He has given up some homers we know about over the weekend against Jazz Chisholm and to close up the first half against the Diamondbacks, but the sweeper is sweeping. The sinker looks good. The cutter, the fastball velocity's up there, touching 98. I am confident that he is going to be one of the Dodgers' high leverage arms. We're just going to have to see, we're just going to have to wait some time for him to get his feet under him. This was a great start in this game. Tanner Scott, he gets a 5-out save. I didn't mention that during the recap. Second win in the last 2 series where, like I said, where Muncy gives the Dodgers a 2-1 win thanks to a 2-run home run. But how about that double play to end the game? So, I didn't talk about it, but Tanner Scott comes in for the save. He actually got 2 outs in the 8th inning. Comes on for the 9th with the Dodgers have a 2-1 lead. Leadoff single to start the game. I think they got an out after that, and then there was a base hit into left field to make it 2nd and 3rd, 1 out. So the tying run is on 3rd, the winning run is on 2nd. Brandon Marsh comes up to the plate. I was actually oddly confident they were going to figure out a way to get out of this because I just thought, Marsh doesn't hit lefties as well. He's been a platoon hitter in the past. I know this year he was an all-star, and he's been great. But I just thought, if Scott can bury some good sliders down and away, there's a good chance he could get out of it with a strikeout and then get the next guy, or at the very least get out of it with just a tie game. On the ball that Marsh put in play, Rushing actually set up in. So like I said, I was expecting sliders. I see him setting up in for a fastball, and I immediately thought, oh shit, because I thought maybe Scott would leave the pitch out over the plate. He actually executed it perfectly, got it in, jam shot to Brandon Marsh, hit it right to Muncy perfectly. Couldn't have gone any better. Crawford, is braking on contact, so he's running right away. For some reason, you're supposed to just go home and hope for a bad throw or something like that. He gets in a rundown, so at the very least, JT Realmuto can go to third base. And then for whatever reason, after the Dodgers tag Justin Crawford out, Realmuto decides to go back to second base where Mookie Betts throws to Tommy Edman, and they get the out, the double play. I guess that is marked a 5-2 to 6 to 4 double play to end the game. Really crazy. I'll be honest, I have no idea what JT Realmuto was thinking. I think everyone was thinking the same thing. Tommy Edman was quoted saying, Realmuto's a smart player. What am I missing? The announcers were shocked for both broadcasts. I think that the managers were shocked. And what's even more shocking is that it was JT Realmuto. It wasn't Crawford who made the base running mistake. It was JT Realmuto, who is a veteran catcher, supposed to be basically the smartest player on the field. I don't know what he was thinking. I couldn't wait for the post-game interview. He said ultimately, and I give him respect because he came out and said, it was a horrible decision. I don't know why I did that. Shouldn't have done that. He took the blame, but he did, because I was thinking to myself, what's even the thought process? When you see Crawford right in front of you gets into the rundown and he's going to get tagged out, your job is to get to third base, so at the very least you have the tying run on third with 2 outs and you still give yourselves a chance. I was thinking to myself, the only thing he could have been thinking was, if Crawford gets out of the rundown and gets back to third base, I can get back to second. But when do you ever see a guy get out of a rundown? And especially where it wasn't like, he ran to third base and they threw home and then he tried to go back or something like that. He was in a rundown where it was like he was obviously going to be tagged out. There was no question about were they going to get Crawford. He was obviously dead as a duck. I don't know how in the world he thought, I need to go back. It literally was like he had money on the game and just gave up the out and was like, I just want to go home. Crazy decision. I don't know what he was thinking. And he did say in his post-game interview, I thought for a second he could get out of the rundown and I could get back, but just horrific backfire of a decision. And it's just little things like that are just crazy. The fact that it was in the 9th inning and it's obviously magnified, just I'll be honest, one of the worst decisions I've ever seen a player make in real time. I don't know how he thought, it was almost like a guy, it was like he panicked, like he didn't know what to do and just went back to second base. But he said I thought I could get back to second and he might get out of the rundown, but it's just I don't know how in the world he thought that. Anyways, we'll take it. Crazy way to end the game. The good thing about the Dodgers in those situations, a lot of people have been talking about things like this, is that in those little baseball IQ situations, they seem to come out on top. I think that one of the biggest things is that they don't panic. They've been in the biggest of situations, and Muncy calmly threw home, rushing. He got in the rundown and he made the throw to third. They actually said in the post game that rushing actually didn't do the correct thing. What you're supposed to do as the catcher is run the runner back. So run with the ball, run him back, chase him down to third base, and either tag him out or get the out at third. He actually just threw the ball right away, which then gets Crawford into the rundown, which allows the trail runner Realmuto to go to third base. Realmuto just effed it up. I don't know, again, what he was thinking. So, but regardless, the Dodgers don't panic, so Mookie Betts in that situation calmly tags out the runner. He looks to his left, sees JT Realmuto, and makes a calm, didn't even rush the throw or throw a bullet, just a calm bloop throw to second base, gets the runner. Game over. Dodgers don't panic. And a disaster situation for the Phillies. Dodgers get out of there with a win, even up the series, and they go for the rubber match, Game 3, Wednesday afternoon. Pretty big game. Dodgers had the series win against the Yankees. If you're able to get out of Philly with a series win, go to New York. You could look forward to maybe, I'm getting ahead of myself, but sweeping the Mets, getting another series win, and 3 pretty good teams that you're facing to start the series, start the second half. I know the Mets aren't good, but you know what I'm saying. You could really start to build off that into the second, starting off the second half. But you got to get a win, first of all, in Game 3 against the Phillies to get the series win. Eric Lauer versus Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola has the highest ERA in baseball, I believe, so got to put up runs against Aaron Nola. No excuse to not hit Aaron Nola. So in the first inning, didn't get off to a great start. Alec Boehm, who played great in the series, 2-run homer off of Eric Lauer to put the Phillies up 2-0 right away. In the third inning, though, the Dodgers cut the deficit in half thanks to a solo home run from Dalton Rushing, his 11th home run of the year. This was a bomb to dead center. Later in the fifth inning, Dalton Rushing with another extra base hit. This time it's a double down the right field line. 2-run double makes it a 3-2 game. Dodgers now have the lead. Bottom of the fifth inning, Brian De La Cruz hits a home run to dead center. His first game as a Philly, by the way. Ties the game up 3-3. In the sixth inning, though, Max Muncy with his 3rd home run of the second half, his 2nd home run of the series, his 20th home run of the year, makes it a 5-3 game. That was a 2-run shot off of the Phillies bullpen, actually, that was, I believe. That was off of Nola, too, I believe. Later on in the 8th inning, Dodgers had the bases loaded. Kyle Tucker with a sac fly to center field to make it 6-3. Then Dodgers really put the nail in the coffin thanks to another bases loaded hit for Tommy Edman. Triple into right center field, empties the bases to make it a 9-3 game. Dodgers go up big. Phillies would get on the board in the 8th and 9th inning. Another RBI single for Alec Boehm, and then an RBI single for JT Realmuto to make it 9-5. But the Dodgers hold on to win by a score of 9-5. Eric Lauer gets his 5th win of the year, his 4th win as a Dodger. Brock Stewart pitches 2/3, Jack Dreyer for 1, Will Klein for 1, Edgardo Henriquez for 1. They win by a score of 9-5 to get the series win. Big series win over the Phillies. They win the season series over the Phillies, which is nice too. And they start off the second half pretty good as they can head to Philadelphia. They actually quick trip to Washington, D.C. to visit the White House as reigning World Series champs. And then they can head to New York tomorrow to play the New York Mets. Let's talk about Eric Lauer really quick. I gave you his. He got the win. 5 1/3 innings pitched, 4 hits allowed, 3 earned runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. He did give up 2 homers, but he does get the win, and he continues a pretty solid start since he joined the Dodgers like 2 months ago. Claimed off of waivers or DFA'd, whatever it was, from the Blue Jays. So like I said, his 4th win in a Dodger uniform. He had a ERA barely under 7 before joining the Dodgers. It was like a 6.69 ERA or something like that. Since he's now joined the Dodgers, his ERA is in the low 3s, but it's on the season, it is a 4.83 ERA. So he's dropped his ERA almost a full 2 runs. He's been massive for the Dodgers. Again, he's almost like, in his own way, a mini version of Justin Wrobleski. Doesn't get many strikeouts, but he pitches pretty deep into the game regularly. He goes 5 innings. Will allow 2 to 3 runs, doesn't allow a lot of walks, doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, but he does his job. And shout out to him because I know they've mentioned this on the broadcast before. he said this a couple times in interviews that he knows his role. His role is to give innings, pitch deep into the game, relieve the bullpen. Like, he kind of understands his role is not to go out there and be a savior for the Dodgers. He's probably has zero chance of being part of the playoff rotation. Probably doesn't even have that great of a chance to be part of the postseason roster. But you know what? You could have a big role for this team, go deep into the game, eat innings, relieve some of the, stress for a lot of the guys in this rotation. And he's done more than that because he's pitched good. He hasn't just been a guy that's like, hey, go out there and throw 100 pitches. Even if you give 8 earned runs, you're staying in there. And that's not easy. Again, Oral Hershiser said this on the broadcast. It's not easy for a pitcher to go out there knowing even if you crap the bed, you're still going to be out there. So you're going to go out there either way. You might as well pitch good so your numbers don't look horrible. So shout out to Lauer. He's actually, pretty shockingly has been, I don't want to say a godsend, but he's been huge for the Dodgers. No question. He's been massive. The offense in this game. All right. They did put up some runs against Aaron Nola like I hoped they would. 5 earned runs, 7 hits against him. He had 4 strikeouts, but they hit 2 home runs off of him. Dalton Rushing, pretty big day at the plate for him. Home run and a double on the season. He now has a .474 slugging percentage and an OPS of .812. Important because for the foreseeable future, Rushing is the guy behind the plate, and he's been very streaky, but he's going to provide some pop. He's going to do some wild things. He's going to have some wild at-bats, but I believe that he is a good player. I've seen a lot of talk on Twitter about the Dodgers need to trade for a catcher. I've seen a couple people say that because of the Will Smith injury. I think that's pretty crazy, I'll be honest. How many organizations can lose one of the 3 best catchers in the sport? We'll call it, to be safe, 5 best catchers in the sport for an extended amount of time, and the guy that's his replacement has an OPS above 800. How many people could say that? So don't spoil yourselves, Dodger fans, that, because Will Smith is out, the Dodgers need to go trade for Hunter Goodman of the Rockies. Now, if you're saying that the Dodgers need to trade for, another backup, a right-handed bat, a real backup catcher, I guess I could get behind that, but, there's really no value, there is value, but it doesn't really make a difference to have an elite backup catcher. Being a backup catcher is, your job is to relieve the starting catcher once a series, basically. Alfonso is in there to do. We didn't even talk about that big base running decision with in game 2. Alfonso was on second base. Ohtani was at the plate. He hit a double, tried to stretch a single into a double. Was originally called safe at second base. Replay showed that Ohtani was out. And Alonso actually wasn't really running all the way through home plate and slipped. And because Shohei was tagged out before the run scored, so that run was taken off the board. So that was a bad job by him. You got to be running the whole time. You can't take anything for granted. And Andy Paz on deck, you got to become a base running coach and tell him to run all the way through. So that was a bad decision. But regardless, Alfonso is the backup catcher right now, who actually seems like a pretty decent player, like switch hitter, seems like he knows what he's doing behind the plate, has pretty decent numbers in the minor leagues. So if you're thinking that, the Dodgers are going to make a trade for a catcher, pause your expectations on that, because I can almost guarantee there is a 5% chance, maybe less, that they will trade for a catcher. The only chance they trade for one is it's a right-handed bat to face lefties, and it was a guy that was for free almost. Why would you trade for another catcher when you have Rushing as your backup, who is young, who needs plate appearances, honestly, to get better in his career? When was Rushing going to get that many at-bats this year to begin with Will Smith being your catcher? And he's played well. I know that he's very streaky, and I'm sure that if you did if you kind of cherry-picked his numbers after, the month of April, they probably don't look that fantastic, but for the season as a whole, he is slugging well over 450, and he has an OPS over 800. He can hit. I don't know what else you want. How many teams can have a backup that hit ninth and have an OPS over 800? So I just, that's That's a little crazy to me, but anyways, it is important for him to hit because for the foreseeable future, he is the guy behind the plate. Freddie Freeman, he had 3 hits in this game, including 2 doubles. That's nice to see because he was a little bit cold out of the All-Star break. Didn't do a whole lot in that series against the Yankees. Didn't do a whole lot his first couple games against the Phillies. Hadn't had an extra base hit in a little bit, but, he throws out 2 doubles. And, I was not at all worried about Freddie Freeman. It's just the ebbs and flows of the season starting to look like this was going to be one of those rare cold stretches for Freddie Freeman. But, the 3 hits looked nice, and hopefully he could throw out a couple more hits in this Mets series. Tommy Edman, he also had 3 more hits. He's been incredible since coming off the IL. Almost played in 30 games. He's played 28 games this year, hitting .360 with a .439 on base. That's incredible. .535 slug would be a career high by a lot for him. .974 OPS. He won't sustain this. He won't have an OPS over 900 or anything like that, or a slugging over 500. But I've always said that I think that there's more in there in the bat with him, especially as a right-handed hitter. I think he could be a very good hitter, and I think he could hold his own from the left-hand side of the plate. But him hitting in the 8th or 9th spot like this makes the lineup just so deep. So deep. I mean, you got to face Shohei Ohtani off the rip as your leadoff hitter, and then you got all the other guys mixed in there, and then you got Tommy Edman hitting 8th or 9th like this. It'll be interesting to see what his numbers look like at the end of the year. Obviously, it's like he'll have played like half a season because he came off the IL in June. But fantastic stuff, and without question, Alex Freeland has lost playing time because of Tommy Edman, and when Kike Hernandez is activated in a few days, it's probably going to be Freeland who goes down, rightfully so, because Edman has been incredible, making some pretty nice plays at second base and third base. He made an incredible play in Game 1 of this series at third base to turn a double play, couple ABs in couple innings in left field. He's been incredible. He's got that great swing, like very flat swing, and makes a lot of contact. Right now, he's making a lot of hard contact, and he looks fantastic. And, a guy that we know has played a big role for them in the postseason the last 2 years, and we know what he did in 2024. Big reason why that lineup was so incredible in 2024 was because of what he did in the postseason. So right now, he's hitting great. I wouldn't be surprised Friday night against Sean Manaea, who the Dodgers will face. He probably will be hitting 5th or 3rd or something like that against the lefty. So that's great. And then I wanted to talk about Muncy and give him his own separate segment before we get to the wrap up about the upcoming Mets series. He hit his 229th home run in a Dodger uniform Wednesday night, passing Ron Cey for the second most home runs in LA Dodger history. He's only 13 home runs away from passing Roy Campanella, who is 4th all-time in Dodgers franchise history, both Brooklyn and LA, of course. That's pretty amazing, considering that, they've talked about this a lot lately on the broadcast. I just think that a lot of people are, kind of looking back at Max Muncy's career as it's been a little bit less than a decade at this point. This is a guy that was almost, retired a little less than a decade ago. 2017, he contemplated retirement. This was a guy who came up with the A's, just wasn't doing it at the big league level, ended up getting a minor league deal from the Dodgers, which was originally to go to Double-A, I believe. But I think because of a couple injuries, he started the year in Triple-A and got called up in 2018 in late May, and the rest is history. He will go down as one of the best Dodgers in LA Dodger history, and if he could finish his career strong with the Dodgers, right now he's having one of the best seasons of his career at 35 years old. If he could play a few more years, he's going to really give Eric Karros a run for his money for the most home runs in LA Dodger history. I think he's got 270, and Muncy's right now is at 229. I wanted to give his numbers since the start of 2018 to just show this is 1,500 minimum plate appearances, where he ranks as a guy who was DFA'd, as a guy who came out of nowhere. 24th in on-base percentage since 2018, 27th in slugging percentage, 23rd in OPS, 24th in WRC+, top 30 hitter in the sport since he debuted, 8 years ago at this point. 7th in walks and 12th in home runs. In his last 7 games, he has a slugging percentage of .773, and in his last 15 games, he has a slugging percentage of .510. He's been great in the second half. We know he's been great all year. arguably been the best third baseman in baseball this year, behind Junior Caminero of the Rays. He's been amazing. One of the more consistent Dodgers all year. He has slumped a little bit, but for the most part, his slumps have been pretty quiet. 20 home runs for the 6th time in his career, I believe. Probably going to hit 30 home runs, and he's just a steady guy who gets on base, who walks, who doesn't chase, who hits for power. He's hitting lefties this year at one of the best rates of his career. We know about the defense that he's played this year. He's been incredible, and don't be surprised if this guy has a massive postseason. He's been a very streaky postseason hitter in his career. For the most part, he's been very good, but like last year, if you go back, he was, let me think. I don't think he did much against the Phillies and the Brewers. He really didn't do much throughout the entire postseason last year. If you go back 2 years ago, he was incredible against the Phillies, against the Mets in the NLCS. I think he had he set his own on-base streak for consecutive at-bats or something like that, like 11 straight at-bats getting on base. But then in the other series, he was kind of quiet. So he's a little bit of a streaky postseason hitter, but I do think that he's like kind of he's hitting for a career high in batting average this year, and he's kind of like not slump-proofed his game, but he's kind of created a way. His game has kind of evolved into less slumps, and I do think that's going to benefit him in the postseason to where I think he'll just have a very solid postseason as a whole. So great stuff from Max Muncy. He's obviously been incredible. Let's go to the last topic, which is looking ahead to this weekend. Dodgers-Mets will play a 3-game series in New York. It'll be Roki Sasaki taking the mound against Sean Manaea Friday night. Yoshinobu Yamamoto versus Nolan McLean Saturday night. That'll be a great series, great matchup. And then Emmett Sheehan will take the mound once again against Freddie Peralta. So actually three pretty solid starters for the Mets. Manaea hasn't been that good in a while, but interesting to see what Sasaki does after the week ago in New York with the velocity jump and how good he pitched. I would imagine that he's going to be pretty amped up again, considering that he'll be pitching in New York once again. Probably won't average 100 miles an hour again, but I just can't wait to see what he does there. Yamamoto against McLean, that'll be interesting. McLean has some very good stuff. And then Freddie Peralta hasn't been great this year, but he's still a pretty solid pitcher. Got to see Emmett Sheehan bounce back. And then the last thing, I need to see some better at-bats from a few men in this series, 3 in particular. Kyle Tucker. All right, I didn't talk a bunch about him, but he is just, I really could have done a whole episode about him, and I was contemplating if the Dodgers lost, really doing a huge deep dive on him, but I'm going to save that. All right, I'm going to save that. 505 OPS his last 15 games, 505. Think about that. His OPS on the year is now down to 689. Okay, for a lot of the year, he's just been like quietly mid. Like his OPS has just kind of hovered about like 730. He's just been like a league average hitter. Never has gotten super hot, but I guess he's never gotten like ice cold to become, have an OPS sub 700. Well, now it's down to 689. Kyle Tucker, man, I think that it's time to put you in the boat of what Mookie Betts was last year. This is going to be the worst season of your career. It's already in the toilet. You have 7 home runs. 7. Like, you could get red hot for the next 2 months, and you probably won't even hit 20 home runs. All right, which is a huge disappointment to say the least, because this is a guy that I thought was going to flirt with 40 home runs coming into this season. All right, and he's in single digits. All right. It is time to put all this, saving your season and all that to bed. This is what Mookie Betts did a year ago. You can't save your season. Your numbers are what they are. It's going to be a bad season. Do what you can to perform and help the team win for these remainder 2 months, and it starts in New York Friday night. All right, that's all I'm going to say. Teoscar Hernandez, he has been horrific. In his last 15 games, he has a 392 on base. That's not an on base, 392 OPS, excuse me. That's not an on base. That's not a batting average, not a slug. 392, that is horrific. OPS is at 694 on the year. All right, Teoscar, before he got injured a couple months ago, was actually quietly playing pretty good. Like he was never, he didn't have an amazing numbers, but his OPS was hovering around 800. Like he was fine. Well, ever since he's come off the IL, he's been so cold that now his numbers look really, really bad. You're going to be in there facing a left-hander on Friday night. show me something. The at-bats got to get better. And then the last guy, Shohei Ohtani, I just wanted to save him last because I'm not really worried about him, but he has been quiet last 7 games, 637 OPS, slow start out of the All-Star break. He does have a career OPS of 873 in Citi Field, so I'm hopefully he can break out. He did have a couple of hard hit balls Wednesday night against the Phillies, so I'm hopeful that is a little bit of a precursor of what we're about to see. Not worried about him at all. I'm actually 100% confident that he's going to go on another heater like he was a couple months ago, and he'll have over 30 home runs, OPS close to 1,000. So I'm not really worried about him, but he has been cold as of late, chasing a little bit, swinging out of the zone, pressing. I think he's going to heat up. So that's all my thoughts on this week's series against the Phillies. Pretty good series overall. Dodgers, would like to see a little bit more consistency with the pitching and the offense, but overall playing pretty well. What I would love to see, dream stuff, is sweep the Mets. Sweep the Mets. They're a bad team. If we can come out of this series, out of the All-Star break with 2 series wins against the Yankees and Phillies, and then a sweep of the Mets, that looks great. And then you're going to take on the Mariners and the Red Sox at home. So, as always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod, and you can follow myself at Nick Talking Ball on X. I will see you guys this weekend to recap the Dodgers and the Mets in New York. Have a great rest of your night, everybody.